You're not allowed to fund crime, of course. I mean, if I do business with Iran, I go to jail. But we have domestic terrorism on a greater scale than we've had in my lifetime, 50 years. And the funders of this have not been exposed by the federal government, and they haven't been punished. And I'm confused as to why.
Again, I would say that, again, the Department of Justice, who has the lead in all of those investigations, are certainly moving as quickly as possible. Again, it's something that I talk with the Attorney General about almost on a weekly basis.
That was acting Secretary, DHS Secretary Chad Wolf speaking to Tucker Carlson about the possibility of jailing political opponents. Now, I'm not talking about candidates, I'm talking about members, leadership within the Black Lives Matter movement. You heard clearly Tucker Carlson referring to them as domestic terrorists when in fact this country is currently dealing with right-wing terrorist organizations that have carried out multiple acts of violence. But this is apparently an idea that the DOJ is looking into, something that the Department of Homeland Security is considering. And there are more details in the next exchange that you're about to watch. Here's Tucker Carlson elaborating along with Chad Wolf.
Why haven't we seen the leaders of Antifa and BLM arrested and charged for conspiracy under, say, RICO, like the heads of the mafia families were?
Well, this is something I've talked to the AG personally about, and I know that they are working on it. Look, we've seen about 300 arrests across this country regarding civil unrest and protesting, violent protesting, I would say, criminal protesting, criminal rioting occur. About 300 arrests. About a third of those or 100 of those arrests have been in Portland specifically. And I know the Department of Justice has charged about 74 or 75 individuals there in Portland with different federal crimes. And we'll continue to see how those investigations are going. Department of Justice is also targeting and investigating the head of these organizations, the individuals that are paying for these individuals to move across the country. What we know, Tucker, is that we have seen groups and individuals move from Portland to other parts of the country.
Right.
We had about 175 arrests in Kenosha. Almost 100 of them were from out of state. So we know they're moving around. We've seen them in DC, in Sacramento, and elsewhere. They're organized. We've seen similar tactics being used from Portland and other cities across the country as well. So we know that there's organization. I know the Department of Justice is also looking at that as well.
Two quick things before I go to you, Jank. Number one, Antifa does not have leadership. It is not an organized group of people, and there's no evidence indicating that Antifa poses any type of national security risk in the United States. Second thing I wanted to bring up was this scary notion of people traveling from one state to the next. Keep in mind that the armed militia member, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, traveled from Illinois to Wisconsin, crossed state lines twice with an illegal weapon. Just a little point that I wanted to make before going to you, Jank. So please take it away.
Yeah, so look, fascism has begun. So I used to quote Sandra Day O'Connor on this a long time ago. During the Bush administration, she said about some of the direction that the Bush administration was taking towards authoritarian government and fascism. She said, let us avoid these beginnings so we can avoid those ends. And it was a great quote by Sandra Day O'Connor. We are now at the ends. We're not at the beginnings. And so when you have the head of the Department of Homeland Security saying, yeah, I'm talking to the Attorney General about arresting our people protesting against us and rounding up our political enemies. That's nothing but fascism. So let's look at the facts. So if they were concerned about people crossing lines and doing it in an organized way and causing violence, Anna's 100% right. That's Kyle Rittenhouse. And now his lawyer is arguing that he was part of a well-regulated militia. So that's one of his legal arguments right now. So if that's the case, he is part of a well-regulated group. He crossed the state line and he killed 2 people. All these racists and everyone who makes the Kyle Rittenhouse defense is a racist says, oh my God, the poor guy's attacked by a skateboard. The skateboard is so dangerous. Of course he had to murder that guy. Of course he had to show up in the middle of a protest waving a gun around until someone agitated him and he could shoot them to death. Of course he had to do all that. But what they never tell you is, how about the first guy he shot? Now those details super murky. We saw it in the video. But he seems to shoot a guy in the head, and then people chase him. stone cold murderer is what it looks like, and those are the charges against them. And they say, no, do not investigate the murderer, investigate the people that haven't killed anyone. And find their leaders who are organizing protests, which is the most American thing you could do. And then you notice he switched in the middle there, Chad Wolf, went from like these illegal protests. We're not gonna have these protests there. Oh, right. I'm supposed to call them riots. Illegal rioting, that's what I meant, right? And so do you have any evidence that anyone has organized anything illegal? Nope, not one shred of evidence. Do you have dead people on the ground who are left wing? Yes, I do. I don't care about them, I'm calling that self-defense. But I'm going to politically say all the murders done by the right wing are A-okay and all self-defense. There's almost now in Portland, there might be for the first time ever a left winger who attacked a right winger. But they said all this before that too. And they're like, but the left wing not killing people? I don't care, I'm gonna arrest their leaders. That's what fascism looks like. Look, we got a poll on it too, tyt.com/polls, because it's not half measures, okay? This is real. This is not a dress rehearsal, and they're not gearing up to do it 20 years later. Trump wins, they're gonna, and it's tyt.com/polls/fascism. It's begun. It has absolutely begun, and I need people to understand that. I'm curious if you guys agree. That's why we're doing a poll. The media, I think at this late date, even with their issues with Trump, don't get it. He's gonna round up everyone if he wins. Our democracy is in absolute peril.
So the shooting that happened in Portland, with someone who identified as on the left, that was condemned, right? So, but we're dealing with an asymmetrical situation where there is many cases of right-wing extremists carrying out acts of violence, literally murdering people, and Donald Trump and the right wing, give them a wink and a nod, and it's gotten to the point where Donald Trump is also defending them and excusing the violence that's perpetrated by the right. And then on the left, I mean, of course, murder is not okay, violence is not okay. Those types of actions get condemned. But again, I want to reiterate, it's an asymmetrical situation where one side will acknowledge the consequences and the horrible nature of violence, while the other tries to justify it over and over again if it's done by their side. So let's actually talk about terrorism in this country, extremism in this country, because this has been an ongoing issue. This was actually an issue that was brought to the Department of Homeland Security's attention back in 2009. And after conservatives were crying about it, Obama decided to do away with a small group of DHS officials who were tasked with actually doing something about right-wing extremism in the country. But the situation has snowballed into what we're experiencing now, and I just want to share specific examples of right-wing extremist groups in this country who carried out acts of violence beginning with the Trump administration, okay? Let's start off with a video that was published by the Washington Post in 2017, and then I'll fill in the rest for you guys. Let's take a look.
James Alex Fields Jr. has been charged with second-degree murder after allegedly ramming his car into a crowd of counter-protesters at the white nationalist rally in Virginia, killing one woman and injuring at least a dozen. Adam W. Purrington has been charged with killing one Indian man and injuring 2 other people after he opened fire in a Kansas bar. James H. Jackson admitted that he traveled to New York to target and kill black men. He fatally stabbed one man with a sword before being arrested by authorities. And Jeremy Joseph Christian fatally stabbed 2 men on a Portland train after shouting anti-Muslim hate speech. Those are just some of the most visible incidents already under investigation as hate crimes in 2017.
All right, so that was 2017. Let's take a look at what happened with right-wing extremist groups and their violence in 2018. January 10th of 2018, neo-Nazi terrorist group Atomwaffen charged for murdering an openly gay and Jewish individual, young man, Blaise Bertin was his name. October 24th, 2018, 2 black men are shot and killed at a Kroger in Jeffersontown, Kentucky. Shooter was indicted for 3 hate crime. Shooting was found to be motivated by racism. October 27th, 2018, Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, 11 killed, 7 injured. November 2nd, 2018, Tallahassee yoga studio shooting. Self-described incel went into a yoga studio and opened fire, killing 2 and wounding 6. April 27th, 2019, Poway synagogue shooting in California. Gunman killed, or used, I should say, an AR-15 and started shooting inside the synagogue, killed 1, 3 people were injured. August 3rd, 2019, El Paso Walmart shooting. That was one of the mass shootings that was inspired by Donald Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric. The Trump supporter opened fire, killing 23 people. In May and June of this year, 2020, there were 2 ambush-style attacks against law enforcement, against cops in California, done by members of the so-called Boogaloo Boys. Again, 2 cops were killed, 3 others were injured. We have a problem with right-wing extremists in this country, right-wing radicals in this country. But we're having a conversation about some mythical organized group on the left that's carrying out violence. Are we really gonna let this conversation keep going in the way that it's going? Are these feckless Democrats in Congress gonna continue stepping aside and allowing these fascists to run with whatever narrative they'd like to run with? Because while we're pretending, while we're allowing the Trump administration to pretend as if we have an issue with left-wing terrorism in this country, people are literally getting murdered on a monthly basis by right-wing extremists. And by the way, these are just the big cases that made national headlines. I didn't even list every specific case. You look at the FBI data and it shows that the vast majority of domestic terrorist attacks are carried out by right-wing extremists, right-wing radicals in this country. But you'd never know it because everything is asymmetrical.
So to that point, Anna, look, I'm keep it real. That's part of the reason why I helped start Just Democrats and start a rebellion pack, because I can't stand the Democratic weakness. It sickens me. So Obama gave in to Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and pulled out a perfectly legitimate functioning part of the Department of Homeland Security that was supposed to track these people. He bowed down to them out of weakness, and it sickens me. And that he's just representative of all of the Democratic leadership. So are they constantly talking about the right-wing militia in this country that is constantly murdering people of color, gay people? And if you notice, a ton of attacks were against Jewish Americans, because in their insane conspiracy theories, it's always at the end, the Jews control the world, let's go kill the Jews. So for God's sake, are you ever gonna fight back, Democrats? Are you gonna, look, if a Democrat wins, the first thing they should do is, no, we're reconstituting the part of the Department of Homeland Security that tracks these criminals. We're not gonna go after political opponents, that's insane. We're not fascists like the Trump administration. But if someone is planning to commit crimes and they kill people, are we going to track that? You're goddamn right we are, and we're gonna call it by its name. But Biden won't do that. I guarantee you that if he wins, he says we're gonna look forward, not backwards. We're gonna heal the nation by pretending that right-wing terrorism doesn't exist. I got news for you, it exists. But it's so asymmetrical that instead of talking about the real problem, we're talking about non-existent left-wing terrorism and then going to actually round up political opponents of groups like Black Lives Matter that had nothing to do with any of the violence. No, who cares? They oppose us politically, who cares? Round them up. Look, brown shirts. And so that's one part of the problem. The other thing is, guys, you got to understand why this Kyle Rittenhouse, situation is so dangerous, and why Chad Wolf and Tucker Carlson are grade A fascists. It's because this is part of. Look, go to any museum about the Holocaust. Yes, I said it, and it's definitely true. And go read what they did in the beginning and in the middle. What they did was they would send out vigilantes. They would send out thugs to go intimidate people, commit violence. And honestly, back then, they wound up doing far, far worse at the end, obviously. But in the beginning, even the German Nazis were not as brazen to shoot people in the street in the head and walk away and go, oh, you're the terrorist, right? They did the Reichstag fire and they pretended it was their enemies, etc. It was almost more sophisticated. Here it's just brazen. They said Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump encourage vigilantes, go out there and defend the streets, defend property. Kyle Rittenhouse lived in Illinois. He didn't have anything to do with property in Wisconsin. He went to go there to try to pick a fight with a weapon, full well knowing that guys like Tucker Carlson, all of Fox News, and Donald Trump would have his back. They'd call it self-defense as soon as he murdered anyone, and it would send a message to everyone else. If you go to a protest, they'll shoot you in the head and they'll get away with it. Now, if that doesn't put a chill down your spine, you're not getting it. And so I can't believe this election is anywhere near close. I mean, Look, compared to other elections, it's not that close. Trump's losing by 6 to 9 points was a gigantic loss, but he should be 35 points. We have an actual racist demagogue fascist. And people are like, oh yeah, should vigilantes on the right be allowed to murder people in the streets? And then we arrest the left wing. We arrest the left wing leaders that have nothing to do with the violence, blame them for it, and call them terrorists. And 40% of this country is okay with that. Nah, you know what that tells you, honestly, and it's really the most frightening thing in the entire Trump administration. 40% of any country at any time is absolutely ready for fascism and happy to receive it, including the United States of America.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.